Welcome to Word Blindness, Dyslexia Exposed. I am Juliette Hahn. I'm here with my co-host, Brent Sopel, and we are here to change the narrative. We want to educate, but we also want you guys to understand what it is like to be dyslexic and how things can change. So join us every week for Word Blindness, Dyslexia Exposed. So welcome to Word Blindness, Dyslexia Exposed. I'm Juliette Hahn, and I'm here with my co-host, Brent Sopel. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. So I think we should give a little contents of where word blindness came from and why we got so excited about it.
Obviously, the dyslexic world is a world that's not talked about enough, and that's what you and I are going to do on many different levels. But that blindness portion is kind of how the whole dyslexic community is working.
Exactly. And the thing that was really cool is when we were we'll give everyone a little insight into our brains, but when we were, which could be fun and scary.
You're sending me all text messages.
well, that's because I became obsessed and over-focused on the name, because I was like, we need a name. And then we kind of both were like, you know what, I think let's start recording and then the name will flesh out. But the more I started researching the word dyslexia and what dyslexia was about, it came really clear that in the 1900s, before dyslexia was like really what they understood, it was called word blindness. And when I said that to you, remember I read you a whole list of names and you're like, wait, go back to that first one. What was that?
That's scary. And I got what you just said. It's actually really petrifying that 1900s dyslexia was around.
I know. And look it's insane.
And then I could almost say we really don't know much more now than we did back then.
No. And I mean, even just to give a little context, like you weren't diagnosed until you were 32, right? When your daughter, who was in second grade. Yeah. I have a family history of dyslexia. However, when I was diagnosed in the school, it was a reading disorder. So they didn't even really put it, under there. Then when my son was diagnosed second and third grade, the school didn't give him the dyslexic thing. And then we're going to get into this whole IEP. They didn't give him that. And I was like, well, wait a second. And so we went outside and did the whole neuropsych, which the neuropsych is something that you talk tons about and why the importance of it. I just would love for you to jump into that and explain that. And then we're going to really talk about the IEP process.
The IEP, the 504, neither one of them, the neuropsych. The biggest thing that we have to take out of that the school is not your friend, it's a business. And just because you are friendly with the teacher or the principal, they don't care. This is a business, and they are not 100% not going to do what's best for your kid. So, you like you said, you're tested through the school. I talk to parents. My demands are a little harsh, but I always insist you go outside. One, for neuropsych, let's find out what it is. You'll get tested for everything. Is it autism? Is it Asperger? Like, it tests for everything. Now we have a full understanding of what we have, and now you can make a plan. Now, if you go through the school, they can dictate what they give you, and they can guide you down a path where they want you to go. And then, second, that is, I've never been in any meetings with superintendents or any of the principals or any special ed's been dyslexic. So why are we going to listen to a non-dyslexic tell us what to do? And the harsh point is that everybody has to remember, it's a business and they do not care about your kid.
And it's so true. And I remember I said to you, because the other thing that we've as we've gotten to know each other a little better, like I trust right away until I don't trust. And I'm not, what is the saying? Like, fool me once, it's my fault, whatever. And I'm going to say that wrong, but fool me a second time. And then it's, whatever.
Parents think they all trust. I think good portion is we all trust the schools because that's what we're supposed to do. We don't know, any better. But that's that mentality that we have to change. They don't care. It's a job for them. And, it sounds a little harsh, but I kind of have to be harsh because if you don't go in harsh and threaten lawyers, and you heard me, yes, make sure you threaten lawyers, because I can promise you, I've been in tables where they've lied right at me, when I've gone there to support other families, just to make sure it gets where they want it to get, because it's a business.
Right. And I shared with you when my oldest was getting diagnosed, I knew we were in a great district. We were in a wealthy community. I realized, okay, there's something, as I said, we have a family history. So we knew what was coming up, but we wanted to get all the details. Yeah. And the school said, we'll do the school testing. And I said, okay, great. And now my mom she was a teacher in New Jersey, and she definitely was saying to me, you know what, this is as you said, they're a business. I'm like, Mom, I know the principal. I know the teachers. They love my son. They love Montgomery. They really like me. Like, they're going to do the right thing. And I mean, I shared with you, I was gutted. I mean, my feelings got so hurt after we did the whole testing. It came back and they're like, okay, he has an LD. And we're like, right. We know that, because we know that for years, but how are we going to help him? Right. So we gave the school, and I don't know if I shared this part with you. I think we gave the school like a year to be like, okay, this is what you guys are going to do. But it was in that year that I also then was like, wait, some of the stuff that they're doing doesn't make sense. And I don't like how this is feeling. So then we did go outside kind of simultaneously after we got the diagnosis from the school and what they were doing. I was like, doesn't make sense. I don't like this. So, and then again, I had my mom and other people, saying, no, just go, you have to do it. I remember my mom came in one time as the advocate, and she was so harsh that my husband and I were like mortified. We were like, Mom, I was like, we know these people, they're going to do the right thing. They can't teach him. So they're going to do the right thing. And it got quickly switched, as you said. And I remember just being like, oh my gosh, they don't care about us in that way. And as I said, I was really, really heartbroken. So we did then have to go out, get the neuropsych, get the attorney. And it was sad. It was a really harsh lesson for me as a parent.
Well, you always want to believe that you send your school kids there for 8 hours a day. They've got their best, your kid's best interest. And when it comes to this stuff, they don't. Now, if you're in a normal class, that's a whole different story. But, they will, if you take that test, through the school, they're only going to give you one or two of them. Like a neuropsych test could be anywhere from 4 to 6 hours. It's like 30 minutes in the school. I'm not good at math, but that doesn't add up. So they're going to, run you down a path where they want to take your kid, because they already have teachers, they already have things already set up, so they can just flow right in there, and nothing's an issue. And I told you a story. I had a parent reach out to me last week, a school district. They ended up suing them. They went into mediation, and in the paperwork there was a gag order, so the family cannot talk about what happened, what the result was, how their son is getting helped because of the gag order. That just proves a point of schools. It's a business, because they don't want anybody else to find out whatever was awarded. So that, the next person, because, obviously dyslexia is 1 in 5, hereditary, it's going to continue to happen.
And it is now. And again, the whole business thing is, and that's where I think when a parent is going through this, because it is also very lonely, it's very scary. You want to trust the teachers. I mean, I remember, like, because of my dyslexia and my learning disabilities, like, I wanted so badly to be like, okay, they get it. I explained my story and how maybe I was wrong when I was little, and I didn't want this to happen to my child. And let's do the best for him so he can succeed. Yep. And we're going to, all these different things. And you feel like you're alone on an island. I mean, I think I shared with you, my husband was there, and he was there the whole time through it, but he also didn't understand. And he was looking to me to be like, okay, you're running with this, because he's working outside the home and I'm staying home. And he also was like, oh, you get it because of my dyslexia. And I just remember I don't think I've cried more, and I'm an emotional person, but I cried more during that time, because I would also see Montgomery come home so tired and be like, they're doing these tests. And then it brought me back to when I had to get tested and you had to draw all these things. And I'm like, I'm not an artist.
Have you ever come across a dyslexic teacher? Meaning, they're not teaching dyslexic based phonics. They're just an actual teacher.
So I love that you just asked me that. No, however, and I probably, if I thought about it, maybe not many, because what did I say to you? And well, I'm going to let you finish your thought, but yes, no, not a lot.
Yeah. I don't know any. Obviously I didn't get diagnosed till I was 32, but with the foundation, everybody I talk to and work with, I haven't come across a single one.
Right. And I remember my mom saying this. And again, this is not I want you guys that are listening, this is not a bash against teachers or education.
No, not at all.
Not at all. We're just making people aware because we have both gone through it. And when you hear someone's story, maybe you're not going to feel as alone, and maybe you'll get some tools that we're talking about. Like, okay, I know, I listened to this podcast and they told me to get an advocate, an attorney. I'm going to do that right away instead of doing what I did and go in and be like, no, they're like, I felt so dumb too later that I trusted.
You feel dumb. If you don't have dyslexia, you don't know what it is. You don't understand it. So that's the biggest portion to what all this is we just said so far we haven't come across any teachers. So it's definitely 100% not a bash session. It's just trying to give a different light on that. Most teachers don't have it, or so far to this point, none. So why we're going to rely on them to dictate what needs to be done or should be done when they've got no idea. And if you're not dyslexic, you'll never understand it.
Right. And it's funny because I think I shared with you one of Montgomery's special ed teachers who was young, and there was a couple situations where I was like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe this woman is even doing what she was doing. Like I knew that it was not correct. And again, she was doing the best to her ability, but she wasn't understanding what he needed. And I remember going to my mom and my mom saying, again, my mom was a teacher. My mom has children that are dyslexic. My mom is not dyslexic, but I will say the way my mom teaches, she teaches to someone that learns different. She teaches in many different ways, which
again, having kids, that's a different, being a teacher being a mom that has kids with it takes on a different, different spread of wings. So that's great that she's able to do that, but most teachers can't. And I use the one, making kids read out loud in front of class, and you have to go. Remember, the teacher has got no idea what it's like. Nope. That's just normal to go and get the kids to go and read. So nope. In my terms, I call it child abuse.
I know. And we shared in one of the things how I had a teacher, call me retarded because I said pubic instead of public. And, and that's again, right. Those are people that don't understand and don't get it. And it's like, okay, well, this is what we are taught in school. And what you and I talk about all the time is if you live it, it's very different than what you go out and learn. So you can be top educated in these things. And not saying that you don't know what you're doing, but to understand it is to live it.
And especially when it's your brain. Mm-hmm. Oh, why don't you just tell me what you see? What? What do you mean what I see? You tell them that to a kid in grade 3 or 4. No, what do you mean? What? This is how I see. What are you talking about? If it's something where you can open the textbook or you're building something, all right, that's a completely different, then they can learn that. They can understand it. They can see it. They can touch it. But the dyslexia, you're not touching any of it.
But it's also, to your point, is when you see things different, you don't realize that people see things a different way. So even if you could go to color blindness, like when you say to someone, well, what do you see? What do you mean? What do I see? This is what I see. I don't know what you see. Yeah. So how can I relate to someone being color blindness? You can visualize it.
Yeah. I've had to learn different analogies as I speak to kind of give references, like when I drive home, on the freeway, every time, every license plate that I see on every vehicle, I know what it is, memorize it. People are like, right. Why are you looking at license plate? That's just how my brain looks. Or if I'm carrying a couch to a door, I can tell you 10 feet before I get there that if it's going to fit or not.
Right.
People are like, why would you be staring at light? I'm not staring. It's just how my brain works.
Right. And it's interesting. And I don't know if I shared this. We lived in New York City when Montgomery was a baby. And he didn't love the stroller. He liked to be carried. So I always carried him. And when as soon as he was able to put his fingers up, he would point to every street sign, every word, everywhere. And he would scream if I didn't stop and read it. So it was like a joke because I had memorized every single, oh my God, it was terrible. I was like, I just want to take a walk, kid. Like, what is your obsession?
Painful.
It was painful, but anyone that had stuff on shirts, he would point and want you to read it. And now that we know that he's dyslexic, I never put two together, but he was trying to process in his brain what this looked like. Cause it looked, like it was fascinating to him.
That's how he processed things. Obviously a lot of dyslexics don't read, they memorize.
Well, that's what he did. He memorized.
And he was just intrigued by them, and by the signs and where they position because, at that age, you don't know you're seeing things differently. So, thank God my kids didn't do that. I would be like, no, beat it.
I literally was like Tuesday 30. Tuesday and Thursday. I knew every single street sign.
I'd be like, no. You want that? Go ask your mom.
Yes, no, I know. Well, that's the thing. That's so funny is I would have to pause and stop and read it. It was interesting, but he did memorize. And when I think I did share this with you, we knew that because of his name was Montgomery, dysgraphia was more of what we knew right away. That was the struggle. But with dyslexia, he memorized so many different things. We listened to books, so he memorized. So the teachers didn't know. He would come home and say to me, he would ask the teacher first, what are we reading in small group? He would come home to me because we had tons of books and say, Mom, can we get this book? I would read it to him. He would go in the next day and memorize what we did.
Torture.
I know, right? But think about how he already knew that he wasn't doing what everyone else seemed to be doing. So he's like, I got to memorize this because I don't want to be also found out, right? That I really am not reading the same way. But in his mind, he was.
Yeah, he didn't know there was any difference. That's the way he learned.
Exactly. Which is so interesting until it was I think it was Magic Treehouse, Jack and Annie chapter books that he started messing. I mean, that's how much he memorized. It was insane.
Well, that's just a prime example of defense mechanisms that we learn along the way. You learn that at a young age, and talk about strengths and weaknesses. Obviously, that's a strength to be able to memorize.
Oh, insane. I used to say to him, I'd be like, now my dyslexia does not work that way. I can't memorize things like that.
Yeah, there's no memorize.
I wish that I had
Mine's
that.
The opposite. I could measure something and then I could move an inch and I completely forgot what it was.
Me too. Copying things. If I have to go copy something from the computer to my phone and then I read it 30 times and then I'm like, why didn't I just write it down?
Get it wrong
I can't do it
10 times. Mm-hmm.
Yep. It's very frustrating. Mm-hmm. It's very frustrating. So going back to the IEP, thinking about a family and a parent. Now, we also talked about this, a parent that maybe did go through the struggles, because taking it to you didn't know, and where you grew up, going into the league as early as you didn't know what dyslexia was. I knew what it was, even though, I had it. Yeah. Sometimes there wasn't names, it was a reading thing. But I had heard about dyslexia. So can you take us through a little bit about when your daughter was diagnosed and what that looked like for you, not knowing, that you struggled, but not knowing why you struggled, really?
I just thought I was dumb. I didn't hear the word dyslexia till we went back for the results. After her neuropsych. I'm like, sure. What is that? I had no idea. Zero clue. Never heard it. So then obviously I had to start digging in and trying to figure out what that was to be able to get her the help. But I wasn't worried about myself, but she was in grade 2. But I've never heard the word. I was just 32 years old. And I remember getting tested in high school. I think I was reading at a grade 4 level. I guess that's fine. Just push me along because who I was, but it's still right now, people have no idea what that word is. So when we talk about charities and this, that, I'm like, if the word dyslexia is said, it's a success. Right. We want to raise $1 million. We want to do. I'm like, yeah, no, that would be nice, but that's not where we gotta educate before we can change. People have no idea, what it is, and there's so many nuances to each brain. If you're blind, you get more help than we do. And every person's brain works so differently.
And I think that's also sometimes the misconception. People will say, oh, you flip letters. Now, not everyone does. I have to say, I know you always laugh. I do flip letters. I have to if I'm typing sometimes and I'm like, and it's lowercase, I have to stop and be like, and do it on my hands. And I'm like, oh my gosh, if I'm not in a flow.
Oh, I just flip your B's and D's. Oh my God. There's 10 million more things.
And that's the thing, right? It's a part of it. But I think when you shared with me is that the words on your page move around and jump out and get scrambled.
I tell people all the time, the most severe dyslexics, those words are always dancing and they'll never read a day.
Right.
And normal people take for granted reading. It's everywhere. It's all day long. And try struggling at that all day long.
It's exhausting.
And not be able to, communicate what that is. I think 80% of dyslexics never get diagnosed after high school.
And that's because, as you said, that's because of the defense mechanisms or teachers just push them through.
And there's not enough understanding. There's not, in my mind, I always say it's like less than 20% of the world knows what it is. So we were talking about the education system. There's nothing, the education system, we can't change it because we got to educate the whole system first to understand what we're talking about first before we can do this whole, drastic change, because every time there's an IP or a 504, you're sitting in a room with teachers and advisors or whatever they call themselves, and they're trying to figure out what to do, where to go, what's going on. They got no idea. So it's a roadmap every time.
Every time. And the thing is also that we really talked about is that so the first thing, anyone that's listening to it, make sure you have someone in your corner that you can talk to. I mean, that's really important. That knows what they're doing. So an advocate, an attorney.
Well, to branch off that is there's a few different prongs there. If you're going to go that advocate, I'm not a big fan of. Because all the advocates that I've come across, they're not dyslexic. So how are you going to advocate for me when you have no idea what I'm talking about? Right. Now if you're talking to a lawyer, okay, they've obviously got to understand the law. But you're not going to find too many people that can advocate for your kid, but you, because you know how they operate. And there's so many different levels to that. So that's why I'm not a big fan of that, advocate or whatever that, because
that's a business too.
Yeah. I'm going to sit there and, I'm going to support you. Great. All right. Pay me. Perfect. Great. What?
And right. And then I'm talking about advocate, like yourself, like you've gone in and talked to people, like my mom went in, someone that is kind of because as parents, you go in and emotional. I mean, I literally cried every single time. I would cry and then I'd get pissed. So I would cry and then yell. And I am fiery. I am emotional. But every single time I'd be like, okay, then we're just going to get to the point. But it would bring up so much stuff of myself and so many things that I just wanted to protect this kid. And I'm like, what are they? And the things that they just, okay, he's this. And you're like, oh my, it's so overwhelming that you need that support system. Like that's what's really important, to have that support system.
For sure. That's probably one of the biggest components to it is, there's so many layers to it. It's an onion. So it's having that support system of somebody who understands it, myself or you, or somebody who's been in the trenches of it, and not somebody who's trying to create a business or run a business off that. Lawyers are different. That's something a little bit different,
right? Because they have to do for the law. Yeah,
correct. But somebody who wants to be the go-between, the happy medium, or whatever the terminology you want. You don't need it. It's money that you don't need to spend, and it's a non-dyslexic going to try and turn around and tell you what to do anyways. Which that messes everything up anyway. So less is more.
Right. And having that, so that support again, and then also knowing some of the questions to ask and knowing, and that's where it also, it's hard in there because of each state is different.
Yeah.
And this is why having an attorney that knows the law, because that's one of the things that because we also moved states. I mean, years after the diagnosis and stuff, but I remember being like, what do you mean you have to take out his dyslexic? Like they were trying to take out the word out.
Even certain districts, you change districts, you got to change. So 100%, you've got to know where you are. You've got to make sure that person's up to date on that school, that district, everything that, that is going on. Is that a 504? Is it an IEP? Where are we at? Is it exploratory? Is it start of it? A lot of people get left behind with when kid graduates from like grade 5 and goes into a middle school. All that's supposed to be transferred over. It won't. Hear me? It won't.
It won't.
They purposely, mistakenly will lose stuff. So you have to go and do it. So every time your kid graduates from whatever, grade 4 or 5 or 7, 10, 12, whatever, you have to go and basically take that paperwork and make sure it gets transferred over, because it's a business. If they can mess up one and they don't have to bring in this teacher or, draw it out, 3 weeks longer, 4 weeks longer, that's just money in the bank. That's, you take corporate America, and that's what the school is, corporate America. I'll keep this, building interest in my account before I hand it out.
Yep. And the thing that you brought up is not so district to district, but also from grade to grade. I mean, one of the things that I realized, so early on, it was different. Just to give a little bit of my story, we lived in Connecticut, and Montgomery actually was very fortunate. We were able to send him to a school that was specifically for dyslexia. We were like, it was the biggest blessing. Not everyone can do that. A lot of people can't. We were fortunate that he was able to do it. So I had 3 years of I didn't have to breathe. I literally could breathe. I wasn't worried. I was like, he's in a good place. He's learning.
So but that question is, who is dyslexic? I don't mean to cut you off. Who is dyslexic in that school?
So, I actually want to go back and ask, because I know that there was a few teachers that were there when you said that, because I remember they were, or their dad was, or their mom was. And one of the reasons why they went into it is because they wanted to really change it. Now, I can see here. I saw that deep breath. I saw it. But I actually want to go back and do that, because it was again, and I know you don't love this subject, but it was strictly Orton-Gilling. I mean, the way they taught, they learned in the hall, they dictated anything. Everything was not grade. It was like whatever your level was, you were with all different kids. It was, you were outside most of, half of the time. I mean, it was like, you didn't sit in chairs. It
works for him. It worked for him. Awesome. Y'all never, every person's different. Everybody learns differently. Are you audio and visual? I just have a hard time with, schools that are trying to pretend that they're the best school for dyslexia. You're not dyslexic. So don't tell me you're an expert in dyslexia. No, you're not. Because you don't, if you haven't had it. So I'll never knock on somebody. If it worked for them, great.
Right.
Never. Happy that you figured it out, and that whatever that path was, however it was. It's just, you have to be very cautious and just understand that they're talking circles around you. If you don't know, they don't know the emotional side.
Right.
The pain that goes on with it, and the simple things that they would never understand. So, and those simple things hurt 10 times more.
Right. And I love that you just brought that up, because one of the things, and I know you talk about this all the time, is I think what it did for my son at the time, it gave him a different confidence, because he was with people that learned the way he learned and were having the same struggles. And so whether it was the actual school or just being surrounded with, that's hard for you. The understood part, right? The understood part. I remember the first day he came home and he's like, Mom, I don't want to sound mean, but there's people that are worse than do worse than I do in school. And I said, honey, that's not mean. It's a relatability. You see how hard they're working as well. And we talk about that all the time. And I think that's what was the key point for us. And as I said to you, we were in a district that like literally that was like, oh, my kid's different. They were sent off to school. Like I didn't want to do that because I was like, he's learning skills, life skills of how to navigate in this public school struggling. And I know that sounds really mean, but I knew that his confidence was still okay. But the second that he was getting further behind and I saw like, okay, he was struggling more than just in school, it was like, okay, Mom, I don't understand why I don't get this. And I was like, you know what? We need to now when kids are reading to learn, he was still learning to read. And so it was getting, the gap was getting wider. Yeah. So for us, again, we were, so fortunate that we were able to do that jump. But then when we did mainstream him again, we had to like be so on top of it. I had to have all the paperwork, and I am not like I'm organized in a dyslexic organized way, which not everyone can get. So I knew where stuff was, but I was like, oh my gosh, I have to figure out how to pull it all together from all the years. And so to be that advocate, as you said, as a parent, you have to. And I, every year would sometimes kick myself because I was like, I should have done it the week before. Cause I, again, thought, oh, they're going to help here. And then they never do. And then we're 3 weeks in and now he's in middle school and high school. He's like, Mom, I still don't even know what class I'm going to because they switched me here and they switched me there. And then I would call the school and I'd be like, I'm going to rip someone's, and I wouldn't curse, but I'm going to rip someone's face off. Like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?
But
well, I think there's a couple
times I talk about, the number one thing for me is self-esteem.
Right.
That's all I talk about. That's number one. If you don't have that, you've got nothing.
Right.
And you were able to catch it at a younger age because you had it. You were able to see it. Mm-hmm. You were able to see it that way. And if you take a look at, if you remove yourself from the equation and put your husband in your position, that wouldn't have went down that way.
Right.
Montgomery would be a different person today because of it.
Right.
So it's always hard. I don't know how many hours of conversations I've got to have with, the other parent that's not dyslexic.
I know.
How to coach them, how to discipline, because they got no idea.
And, we talked about this because I have a lot of friends that their husbands are the ones that are dyslexic. And I know it sounds funny, but my Dan will always say like, like so many dyslexic and attention deficit people. Like, I feel like I met you. I never even knew what it was. Now everyone is. I'm like, just stop. But a lot of times the wives are not, but they're the ones that are home with the kids. And I just say to them, listen, like you're killing me, what you're doing. And I'm not trying to be a dick. What you're doing is you're killing your kid. And they will always say like, I feel like you're lucky that you get it. And I'm like, it's not luck because we've gone through our shit. But what you're doing by constantly being like, no, that like you're killing your kid. You're killing your kid.
Tough love for dyslexia is tough death.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, I love that, but I hate that, but yes.
Yeah. And it's funny you said that because as I'm thinking, the people I've worked with, a lot of the guys didn't have it.
And I have to say, and I'm going to paint a picture for you, and I know I kind of know what your reaction is going to be. When Montgomery was getting diagnosed, like it was right before, I remember I would have him sitting in the kitchen we had in Connecticut. We had like a whatever, the stove was above, so I could see the reflection. He'd be sitting behind me. I'd be cooking, which I hated and I wasn't very good at. But so I'd be cooking something for the kids. My other two would literally be running around the house. The dogs would be barking. He would be sitting at the table and I'd be like, what? Yeah, honey, you could do it. Okay, go. And this is before he was diagnosed. Okay. And this was first grade. And I remember, so again, like talking to parents that are like, oh my God, I can't believe you did it. I remember being like, dude, just stop, just focus for a second. You got this. Right. I started. And then he would start crying. Then I would start crying. Cause I'd be like, I'm so sorry. Wait, are you having a hard time with this? Like, can you just tell me what's going on? And he'd be like, Mom, I like the dogs are barking. The kids are running around. Like, and I can't even believe in my chaos that I forgot, like, this is not the way. I mean, so that's when we also realized, okay, wait, something more is going on. But I was like,
and that's the key point. Everybody's got shit going on.
Right.
And, that's, got the mental health and all that stuff going on right now. Everybody's got stuff going on. And if you don't have it, you'll never see it.
Right.
So if that was Dan cooking, you would never saw it.
Right.
You would have buzzed on by and see you later.
Mm-hmm.
You saw it. But you've got all those other people that won't see it.
Right. And that's the thing. And I mean, that's the thing that's so crazy is the teacher was giving homework but I didn't reach out to her too, but it wasn't really homework. But for us, it seemed like homework because he couldn't do it. So then it was a lot of time. And I was like,
when my kids were there, I couldn't do it.
Oh, no. But literally halfway through the year, I finally said to her, and I had a good relationship with her. This was another one of the teachers that I really did like. I said to her, we're spending like an hour and she's like, what do you mean? You should not be spending an hour. And then that's when things started because I also did communicate with the teacher. I was like, no, there's something like he's having a hard time. I'm like, first of all, like, I know this sounds terrible, but like you guys changed the math curriculum. Like, I just do top and bottom. I'm like, I have to count on my fingers. I don't know what's going on. And he's remember we were talking, such a literal kid. He's like, Mom, this is how they're teaching me. You have to teach me that way. And I'm like, I can't teach you that way. And you're in first grade. This is and then and then you see, right? You see, oh my gosh, okay, something really has to change. But again, as parents, you don't always want to. So again, we're not knocking you parents that are sitting there going, oh my God, I missed it. You're not, right? You just have to think and also bring a compassion part. Like if someone is struggling, they're not doing it on purpose. We talk about this how many times? There's no class clown. There's no bully. No kid does not want to do well.
And that's the world right there. Everybody's struggling.
Right.
And, when it comes to reading, again, how much do you do? All day long, that's all you do. And that compassion is just take that extra second. Most people get lost in that pain. You got to get past that pain and ask a question, what's going on? Why? To start getting some real answers. Is that processing? Is that, there's so many different things that it can be. And it's tough at a younger age when kids are just trying to learn reading too. You just, slow learner or, so there's a lot of things going on, but that compassion portion of it. I could do that. Yeah. Cause you're 30 years old or you're 40 years old. You better be able to do that. Remember talking to a 4-year-old, 5-year-old, whatever that, whatever it is, but those struggling days just.
I know it brings up those emotions because it is like, I mean, go ahead.
No, I just, it's my allergies, but it's hard. Nobody wants to see the kids struggle. Nobody does. So then you get home at the end of the day and the dogs are barking and everyone's chaos and everybody's tired and divorce is always tough. I talk because it's emotion. You make an emotion decision, not a business decision. And when the kids are emotional, it's tough to see it clearly.
It is. And I mean, homework to me is one of the most ridiculous things ever. I mean, I say to my kids all the time, it's busy work. They're wasting your time. And I get really angry about it because it really is. You're supposed to be teaching them in school. Okay. So why are you giving them stuff to do afterwards? And then it's like, well, we just want to see what they can't do. Okay. And that's one of the things, again, that the public school system and maybe every school system, maybe even private schools, but I don't know that much on the private school sector. I think it's a little bit different, but public schools teach to the weakness and they don't teach to the strength. And let me explain if you understand this. So every IEP meeting, they would say, okay, Montgomery needs to work on X, Y, and Z. Okay. And now you heard me in the beginning of the episode, the kid can literally memorize things.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something that not many people can do. I mean, that's a very bright thing. You see that. Okay. We're telling you that, right? So why are we he's not going to be a mathematician. He's not going to be a scientist. And then the teachers would say, well, Mrs. Hahn, I think, and I'd be like, no. No, you don't. You're telling me that I'm discounting. I'm not. I'm being a realist. There's things that we're good at. And if you keep smushing the things that he's good at, like, you keep pushing those away, but you keep bringing up the things that he needs to work on. What do you think it's going to do to his brain? Like, what do you think that's going to do to self-esteem? Hey, you suck at this every day. You suck at this. You suck at this. You suck at this. I used to go, and my husband sometimes would kick me under the table because I would just sit there and I would start fidgeting. And then I would do this scenario. I'm going to let you, after I tell the scenario, but I would say to them, okay. And I would do this. And usually it was when I was crying. So then I was like pissed and I was like yelling and crying at the same time. I'm like, okay. If you were a star, you were the coach for the track team, and you had this kid that was literally the best high jumper, and you knew he was going to the Olympics, but like his speed, he wasn't fast. He had his own kind of tendency, the way he did things, but he always got it, and he was the top in the state. Would you take him off the high jump and make him sprint the track because you want him to get faster? Or would you have him keep practicing the high jump? And they all would sit there and look at me. And then you would get the one or two coaches that would go, and I would say, so basically all the things that he's good at, you're suppressing, and you keep working on the things he's not. Why don't we strengthen his strengths and leave his weaknesses there? He knows about his weaknesses. You don't need to tell him about it. He knows that he sucks in math. I suck in math. Like, you just stop telling him. Stop telling him that, like, science. And see, I'm getting pissed now, and I probably will start crying in a second. But I would get one or two teachers that would stop, but they would be like, but we can't, because this is how we have to do it, because this is the business. This is the system. This is what we're told from
the business model, the map testing. Everybody's got to get up. You're struggling this, so we got to get those numbers up here. That's probably why they created what's the special classes, the AP classes or advanced.
Yeah,
those classes are probably created to, for that separation. But yeah, obviously we talk about self-esteem, number one. But those teachers don't know any other way, and they don't look at the glass half full. They look at it half empty, because that's how they're taught to teach.
And a lot of them. And again, this came from my mom. So anyone out there that's saying no, my mom was a teacher, and an amazing teacher. She would say a lot of people will go into teaching because they were good students. And it's kind of an easy thing for them to do. I'm going to be a teacher. I was good. I loved school. So I want to go into school and teach it. And I've interviewed actually on my other podcast a few that were teachers, and they would say, when I went in and then I saw the red tape and the bureaucracy and like the things that I couldn't make a difference in, is why I got out. Like I couldn't do it. I couldn't watch that kid. I couldn't watch Johnny, knowing Johnny was failing, knowing Johnny was, and I wasn't allowed to touch him because he didn't have an IEP or a 504, and I wasn't allowed to do it. And I'm like, I could never have done it.
Well,
I would have.
That's a whole other can of worms. Teacher can't say something to a parent. I think, you need to get so-and-so tested. I think I see some, you can't do that because they'll get fired.
Can't do it.
It's a business. And that's the biggest component to that. Take anything away. School is a business. And now you talk about his weakness is his weakness, because they got to get him up to get those certain numbers, or you got a certain day, 10 days. You got your P&L. You got to hit that P&L, and that's all school is. Attendance is a P&L.
Exactly. Right. When we messed that up too. We're all 5 minutes late for everything.
Then you talk about the biggest, another biggest business, college, and it's hard enough to figure out what you want to do later on in life. Never mind when you're 17, 18. So back to your point is, a lot of them go to be, I was good in school, so I could be a teacher. Well, I'm good at something, self-esteem, confidence, so it makes sense. I don't know economics, or I don't know engineering, so it makes sense why they pick that. But it's the business plan that is out there, is that they're executing it every day, because I just got to get these couple kids up there, and it doesn't matter, no big deal, just push them on through.
Yeah, and remember we talked about. And if anyone that's listening knows this and has more knowledge about this, but remember we were saying when someone goes into special ed, what is it like? Are they truly learn? And this is why, again, the neuropsych is so important, because you find out all the different things. So you could be dyslexic and also dysgraphic. So you need to be taught even a little different than someone that just is dyslexic. So what are they teaching in college? Like, are they how many hours are you getting on each of the way people learn? And I
have no idea. I can't even remotely guess. But how many of those special ed teachers have nothing? So you're going to tell me, you're going to teach me, you don't even know because you read it out of the book. So now you know. No, you don't. So they probably have no idea. So, that's why you'll get some dyslexics, put into classes, with handicapped kids and, with Down syndrome, and because they don't know. And it is wrong. It should never be there. No, never be there. Never.
Because that's also the whole self-esteem thing. I mean, and again, that brings me back every time I would start yelling and I would say, listen, like if you talk to Montgomery, you've talked to Montgomery, you would never know that he struggled. So then when you got his IEP, you were like, wait a second. So then again, if you got his IEP and you read his IEP and then you met him, you're like, no, this doesn't add up. And so that you just assume because he doesn't seem like he's struggling that he's not trying. Even though he has an IEP, you're still not going. And I used to get that my teachers used to do that to me all the time. Juliet, if you just would focus, if you stop being such a social butterfly, if you would just focus like you did on the sports field, you would be good in school. Try harder. Oh, I got that. So, right? Did you just try harder? Focus.
Yeah. Dumb, stupid, and lazy. With three words. Mm-hmm. Try a little harder. Oh, you have no idea how hard I'm trying already. None. I'm already exhausted. Yep. And you think I'm lazy.
Well, that's the thing that's hard. I think I shared with you, and if I didn't, when I shared my 9th grade story, but this was the same 9th grade year. I had this English teacher and she was awesome. I really, really liked her. She just had a great energy. My energy, was good. So we did Cliff Notes. Do you remember the Cliff Notes? They were like the yellow book. Yeah. So I would get the Cliff Notes for everything. I think it was Cliff Notes. Like I would be like, oh my God, whoever Cliff is, I love him.
Cliff's a great guy.
Yeah. So I would read I wouldn't even read all of the Cliff Notes. I would do whatever I did. Then I would ask my friends, hey, can you give me a synopsis? Because I learned that way. Like, can you give me a synopsis of it? I would go in and the teacher would ask a question about the book. I would raise my hand and I would give literally the best scenario of this book. And she would say to me, I remember she called me pithy. She's like, you're the most pithy student I've ever had. I love it. I don't even know what that is, but you're amazing. I love the way you have this insight. You're so good at seeing that character and how it developed that this is going to be such a great year. And then I had to do my first paper. Uh-huh. And I remember going home and I remember saying to my mom, can you help me a little bit? Because I really want because she was giving me so much positive, I didn't get a lot of teachers gave me positive, feedback. Yeah. So I wanted to really be I'm going to give a good paper. So she sees that this is what I'm good, that I'm good at this. And I turned my paper in. A couple of days later, she hands it back. Juliet, I need to see you after class. And I just remember shrinking in my chair, knowing, right? She's like, you did not try on this paper. I don't know if you were going out, if you had a game, but you misspelled, you did not do. And I remember I even had spell check. I don't think I don't remember. My mom didn't go through everything. My mom worked too. So she didn't go through everything that I did. And I don't remember exactly, but I just remember I had all these red circles on it. And she was, and she said, I'm really disappointed. Yeah. That was one of those times. And that was that 9th grade with that other teacher. I just remember shrinking and being like, okay, pick it up.
Just the thought
try again.
Test or homework. Oh God, did I hate every second of it. Mm-hmm. Every second of school I hated. Do a report.
We're bringing some stuff up.
Nightmares. I hated every second of it. I'll go play outside in the recess. That's it.
Now, when you were a kid, were you a kid though that was I don't want to go to school and tried to get out of going to school, or you just went?
I went because I would have got my ass kicked. So didn't really have any choice. It's not like nowadays I would have got my ass kicked. So
you just got up and went.
But I hated every second of being there.
Yeah.
Just tried to be outside in the recess or lunch or whatever it is, every chance I could.
And that's the thing. I always just went. I mean, I was like a social butterfly. So I like went for the social side of it. Montgomery was the same. Like he never really was like, I don't want to go to school. If there was ever a day that he was like, I need a break, I would always stop and just be like, okay, he never asks for one. Let me just give him a break. Right. Maybe whatever. He just needs, he's tired. Because as you said, dyslexics work harder than anyone that you can imagine, because again, and this is one of the things that I was really fascinated in when there was like a documentary that kind of showed how like when someone goes to read, that a child that is reading that's not dyslexic, how it just goes in and goes whatever, it does its thing in there. A dyslexic,
we work triple as hard. We work 3 times harder at that than a normal person does.
Mm-hmm.
That's tough.
It's tough. And I think we even talked about like, there's different things that you have to think about, like left and right. I still have to do L.
Yeah.
I'm going to be 50. I mean, I keep saying I'm going to be, I'm 49 and a half. I'm 49. I should stop saying I'm going to be 50.
Typical woman, 49 and a half.
No, that's what I mean. I'm 49. I actually don't mind getting older. I'm getting better with my age. I truly believe that. But I still have to like, I was sharing with you the other day that I started taking yoga, and I was like it blew my mind because I had to focus, because they're like, okay, take your left hand with your left leg. And I was like, look, I was doing it.
Motor skills.
I was doing it all wrong. I was like, shit.
Dyslexics don't have.
Right. And then no, totally. And then driving, right? Someone says, go left. My dad used to say that who was dyslexic, he'd be like, your other left. And I'd be like, damn it.
Yeah, I say that all the time. Like I got kids that can't tie their shoes. I had fine motor skills.
Mm-hmm.
Things that you'd never think of.
Right. And this is what's also fascinating. And I think I shared this with you too, and again, we talked about the different spectrums, right? There's different levels. So like Montgomery, he tied his shoes and then he taught his brother to tie his shoes. So I remember there was a period of time where I was like, maybe he's not just like, because obviously we had a family history. We were looking for things. However, when he was a baby, when he used to eat, he literally would take his whole hand. And this is like the dysgraphia. Now I know his whole hand, and he would shove. He never did the pinch. Like we never picked a pencil up, like a pinch. So there's little things that you can see, but it doesn't matter. Like my nephew couldn't do the alphabet or say any nursery rhymes. Montgomery, because my mom used to do them. Right. Well, we talked about how like someone would be like, what comes after a certain letter? I have to go through and be like A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Like I have to say it.
No idea. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, and that's what we talked about earlier. Everybody's so different.
So different. And that's why it's so important to know, as you said, the neuropsych. So that's like in the school, when you have a child that's struggling, don't let them tell you he's a summer boy birthday. He's behind. Okay. Because
in sports, that's okay. Because yes, if it's a September birthday, that's why, I don't know, whatever that guy, the first 3 months are more like to be professional athletes.
Yeah.
Because they're
Malcolm Gladwell.
Yeah, they're a year older than the September, October birthday. So yes, but not when it comes to school. No,
it's not. And and that's the thing that's maddening. And also for like the girls that are, attention deficit or these things, they also put labels on you. It's like, oh no, you can't be, because that's more of a boy trait, but you're a girl. Okay, well, yes, I'm a girl, but. Right. Okay, thanks. Yeah. Oh, you're doing that like all the boys. You're the most active and more active than all the boys. Okay, thanks.
They slap labels on, on everything, now, but you need to know what the understanding is. You need to understand what is that ADHD, is that, what it is. You need to have that full understanding of what it is to be able to navigate the right way for, your son or daughter.
Exactly. So IEP, first thing is...
First and foremost, and it costs money, yes. Is it a pain in the ass? Yes. but you just can't rely on the school. We'd all love to. We'd love to sit here and say it. Sometimes the neuropsych tests, they're hard to get in. Yeah, 100%. But you can't rely on
it's a pain. Right. And you need to ask around and not just ask the school what doctor to use. You have to do your research. And again, as you said, sometimes it's really hard. Sometimes the better doctors, you have a longer wait. So like the second you feel like, okay, there might be something, which we all don't want to see. I mean, how many times I pushed it? I was like, no, he's okay. We're just not focused. I'm making him do his homework when there's like,
my kid.
Right. But it is. And the sooner you get it tested and actions are better, as you've talked about a lot. The second you can get a little bit more and the kid can get a little bit more help, the better off they are going to be with the self-esteem part. A lot. And then just and not catching up, because that's the other thing was when people would say catch up. Yes, some kids do. They learn, but it's when you have dyslexia, you're always going to have dyslexia.
Doesn't matter. It's very individual based. Like, the talk about schools, map testing and this and that, wherever the kid is, that's where they are right now. You can't go and put a target on, and I'll tell you, it happens all the time. You got two kids. One's got it and the other one's just, smart as shit. And I'm like, so then you got to talk to your kids differently. You can't talk about grades in the same car and, do all these things. It's, it's a big difference what you have to do. And that self-esteem is the number one thing in the world. And I always say dyslexic, hurt longer, stronger, and deeper than anybody.
All right. Well, I think we gave a lot of people a lot of stuff here, but IEP, 504, attorney, neuropsych are
don't be afraid to throw that attorney name around. You may not even talk to one and just say, I've talked to my attorneys. You don't have, just make sure you, scare them.
You do, because you need to let them know that so they don't take advantage of you. And again, you can't take it personally. You have to think of them as it's a business. You are not a person to them, and it's going to hurt. And I was the person that for a year. Right. You're a number. And I was the person for a year being like, no, they like us. We're good people. Yeah. I don't like that. I'm not going to throw things around. I don't need to be that person. We don't need to sue everyone. Let's everyone just get along and be kind. Let's go hug trees. That's how I was. And that's how I approached it. And I got my heart ripped out. I mean, it was bad. It was a really tough year. And it was a realization knowing that I didn't have the people that I thought were going to support and help, that I was going to have to do it myself. And it was scary. I was on an island, even though I had people that were there. I understood. I thought I understood, even though he still says like, you don't understand. I'm like, okay, I totally understand, but whatever.
I don't know. Yeah. My daughter's the same way. I don't know. It's, you find out who your friends are and your acquaintances are in life, when you go through tough times, there's, just another one.
Exactly. All right. Well, guys, thank you for joining for another Word Blindness. Please rate, review, and share this with many people as you know, because you don't know who in your life is dyslexic or has dyslexia or knows someone that was dyslexia or going through an IEP 504, and they need to hear this. They need to hear some of this stories.
Literally could save their lives. And people laugh at me when I say that. I'm like, you have no idea. But yeah, it could.
Yeah, well, you do. I mean, if people read your story, they realize that you do have an idea. So thank you again, and we'll see you for next episode of Word Blindness.